Welcome back to On Texas Football for the weekly update on the recruiting breakdown. I'm CJ Vogel, joined as always by Gerry Hamilton. And Gerry, you've been a busy man. You know, recruiting doesn't stop even when the season's going. Texas number one in the polls again. They get to go out there and kind of pound their chest with that number one ranking, undefeated going into Texas OU this weekend. But more than that, you get to hear it firsthand on the road right now. I know that you were out in East Texas. You're headed out to DFW as well for a few stops there. What's the latest from your side as you travel throughout Texas?
Yeah, well, Texas is a hot school. I mean, they're the cool school. They're becoming the cool school again, which I think is so vitally important in recruiting. I know people hate that term, but cool school matters because we're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and the way they think about this stuff is different than the way us older adults think about it. So I think Texas has a lot of momentum right now. Obviously, if they win in Dallas Saturday, they have a lot more momentum than they even have now, which is already that of 4 straight top 5 classes. And this class has a chance to finish, I think, 2 or 3, maybe be the best class on paper Sark has signed since he's been in Austin, but we'll see how that finishes up. But I was in East Texas yesterday, drove up from Houston to Tyler, went to Chapel Hills practice to see Ricky Stewart. I try to see as many of these guys as seniors as I can so we can make these final rankings on these players. And you know, Ricky Stewart, his tape looks really good senior year at Chapel Hill. He just put up his senior stuff on Huddle. Looks really good. Has the frame. He's a wiry, strong guy like Trey Wisner. Is going to get up to 200, 205 pounds in time. It'll take him a little while. But he at 21.3 on the catapult or whatever their testing is, speed testing Friday against Palestine. So he is getting faster and he's gaining weight. That all sounds great, especially when you consider he hadn't even got to his college strength and conditioning program yet. So he's faster than people think. He's more physical than people think. He's a tough kid. He's coming into December. So everything is lining up there for Ricky Stewart, I think, to be a successful running back, and especially the way he fits in Sark's scheme. Obviously, after that, drove up to Dallas here Tuesday, and I'm out in the DFW Metroplex Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday ahead of the Texas OU game. So we'll be seeing some 25s and some 2026s the rest of the way.
I know it's been a busy couple of days for you, but going back to Ricky Stewart, you actually got to post about on Texas Football. There's an interesting comment made by his high school football coach over there. The interesting comparison. Tell the folks about that one real quick, Gerry.
Yeah, so Bobby asked, you have any player comparison for him? And Coach Reardon said Adrian Peterson. And I don't think he was saying he's going to be as good as Adrian Peterson. He's talking about style he has. That upright, physical runner that has a lot of speed and that has that tough East Texas running back to him. And those guys are always physical, play strong running backs in East Texas. You can look back through history. And there's very few guys that you say, okay, that guy wasn't a really physical running back. Size, didn't matter what his size was. So that was the comparison there in terms of just the way he plays, the way he attacks it, the physicality he has, and maybe some of the speed he has. But I don't think the comparison was he will be as good as Adrian Peterson.
Regardless, always good to be in the conversation with a guy like Adrian Peterson. Before we go on to talk about where Steve Sarkisian was on the recruiting trail this past week, Gerry, a quick word about our sponsor for this week's recruiting breakdown, Mark Saunders in Allstate.
I know where all the On Texas Football family members should be. That's calling Mark Saunders, Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one singular place that protects all of it? Here's some great news, and I've got it. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you'll need to help keep tabs on protection for all your stuff, everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. And that's really meaningful because I'm doing this in my car, by the way. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? You'll be in great hands with over 35 years of experience that Texas alum Mark Saunders has. Give him a call today, 512-218-8571.
Perfect. Thank you, Gerry. And thank you again, Mark Saunders, for being the sponsor of the recruiting breakdown here at On Texas Football. All right, spinning back to Steve Sarkisian because he was a busy man as well. He fired up the helicopter, the recruiting copter, and headed on over to Houston this past weekend. I got to see Jonah Williams, Caleb Chester, Nick Townsend, Tanook Hines even over at Decaney. But, Gerry, there were a few stops that he made that I think Texas fans will want to know about. North Shore and Conroe pair of cornerbacks there still on the board for the Longhorns. What's the latest going on in Houston?
Yeah, so I think those visits were really here. You see some of the remaining recruiting targets: Dorian Brew, Devin Sanchez, Dijon Lee at corner. Obviously, Kobe Sellers is somewhere on that board as well. But look, I think the major thing for Sark was to get some FaceTime in front of Dorian Brew, Devin Sanchez. You see Malcolm Simpson up there, Kelshawn Johnson. He got FaceTime in front of all those guys. And talking about Brew and Sanchez. Brew committed to Oregon, Sanchez, Ohio State, and Sanchez was at Ohio State last weekend. And the key is Texas is trying to get those kids to campus, preferably for the Georgia game. Just get in front of those kids in Austin one more time. Get those kids to see Texas on a game day in 2024. The interesting thing with like a Devin Sanchez's recruitment, the last time he was on campus, Texas was not nearly the team they are. They didn't have the fan base's excitement around it they have now. There's just so much that's changed from a facility standpoint. Bevo Boulevard's just everything around the football program has continued to grow. The question then becomes, are those guys going to show up? Now, that doesn't mean Texas has to have those guys show up for the Georgia game or a college game or a Saturday game day. That's preferable, though, because, I mean, Devin Sanchez was just up at the Iowa-Ohio State game. He just saw Ohio State this year. If somebody wants to just come to a practice later on in the season, they're fine with that too. But the key here is Sark, Texas is trying to get those guys on campus one more time before December 4th signing period. And we'll see. I think Brew's a better shot than Sanchez. I think both are long shots until they show up on campus, either one of those guys. But I place Brew's chances higher than Sanchez for Texas right now. Then there's Kobe Sellers, who's not listed on there at Shadow Creek. Sark went by to see Chris Stewart, the 4-star receiver in 26, committed to Texas at Shadow Creek. Also spent some FaceTime in front of Kobe Sellers. Terry Joseph has stayed in contact with him. I think he's on the board there. I think Brew and Sanchez maybe are the targets right now. Then Dijon Lee, the out-of-state targets as well. Naheem committed to Ohio State at Birmingham Parker. Is he going to show up at a game this year? It's very much a long shot, but now he's one of those high-level guys. Then speaking of Hitchcock, Sark stopped by Hitchcock there as well. I said, speaking of looking at Malcolm Simpson and Kelshawn Johnson, I think Dalen McCutcheon, better shot for Texas than Kelshawn Johnson right now. That's where I'd go with the wide receiver spot, third wide receiver spot of the two in-state guys. Malcolm Simpson's interesting because Texas would love to ideally sign 5 defensive linemen in this class. They've got to get 4. Yeah. Simpson's interesting because he fell behind academically early on at Galveston Ball. Now he's trying to make that mad rush to get to where he needs to be with the high school credits, the requirement. There's no test anymore. That's not the problem. It's getting all your credits if you fall behind early. And if he's on track to do that, I think Texas becomes a legitimate player for him. Right now he's committed to Nebraska. Honestly, I think Texas would be a tougher one to beat if they come through and kind of follow through and really come after him. Simpson is scheduled to be at the Texas-Georgia game October 19th. He's trying to get back to Nebraska, but he doesn't have a date yet. So when will that be? We shall see. And then Sark was at the first half of the Galveston Ball Port Arthur Memorial game. Obviously there to see Jonah Williams, but Port Arthur Memorial has 2026 linebacker Tank King, who will be at the Georgia game, as well as 2026 running back Amonte Martin, who is a guy that everybody's evaluating. Oklahoma State, some others have offered him, but the Texas is of the world, Oklahoma's of the world. They're still evaluating him. So that was a game that had a lot of talented players, but Jonah Williams put on a show. Then Sark, the second half, got in the helicopter at halftime, flew up to Planet Ford Stadium in Spring, and went to the second half of the Decaney Westfield game. So he saw Nick Townsend play, who is pretty much, in my mind, at this point after seeing him this season, huddle and in person, a guy that will end up ranking a 5-star prospect.
Of course, talking about Tank King, I know that he's going to be on campus for the Texas-Georgia game. You mentioned him there. Sarkisian got to see him in person against Jonah Williams. Not too bad of competition there for the two guys out of the Golden Triangle. Tank King visited in the spring, Jerry, and he certainly looked more so like a guy ready to enter his freshman year of college than a guy that was just entering his junior year. Going back a little bit about the wide receivers, I have a couple connections up at Lovejoy, and as a former Leopard myself, the word around Dalen McCutcheon is, he's still committed to Florida State. If he were to back off of that commitment to Florida State, Texas would be the team to beat. I think right now, maybe more than anything, it might just be about that green light from the Texas side of things versus where he actually wants to end up. Of course, Texas will be hosting Kelshawn Johnson for the Georgia game as well. Dalen McCutcheon was on campus for the Mississippi State game last week before the bye. So Texas is certainly trying to get their best crack at flipping one of the two wide receivers into this class right now. But moving on about some of these, 2025 visitors, Jerry, because, there's plenty of them coming in for this Georgia game. You talk about, Kelshawn, Malcolm Simpson, Michael Terry, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Just in, broad perspective, what will an environment like this one do for these recruits and kind of leave that lasting impression of, again, that entire day of Bevo Boulevard, the atmosphere, and everything that goes on into this game?
I think the big thing is get the win Saturday over Oklahoma. That's obvious.
Sure.
Then it's going to be a fever pitch environment. Because Georgia will come in that game with their back against the wall, almost having to win, considering they still have games at Ole Miss and against Tennessee to ensure getting to an SEC championship game or a playoff. They have to win. They can't lose that game. So there's going to be so much around that game. It'll be college game day. It's a night game in Austin. That means the drone show and everything else that goes along with it. It's F1, Formula One racing weekend. M&M's has a concert in Austin Saturday as well. I mean, it's going to be a crazy environment. There's also like volleyball games. Volleyball plays Georgia that weekend as well. There's like everything going on at the University of Texas and in the city of Austin that weekend. So it's going to be off the charts, excitement level and energy level in Austin. Now let's start with Joseph Bottu from Grayson, defensive lineman. Kenny Baker saw him last Friday. He's scheduled to make his official visit to Austin that weekend. And this one looks like it's headed to a Georgia-Texas battle. Alabama's trying, Tennessee's trying. He remains committed to Florida, but it really looks like Georgia and Texas may battle this one out. He's going to have been on Georgia's campus 2 or 3 times before signing day, and maybe 4 times in the official visit. Texas will get him on campus twice, it looks like. So that one's a battle. And we'll see who else. Walter Mathis, does he make it on campus, the LSU commitment? Does he make it on campus for the Georgia game? Because the reality is there's another hurricane coming through Florida. And while that thing it's going to cut across Florida, you just don't know where things are going to be at in Savannah. They just got power back October 5th. That kind of messed up the whole high school football season and school there. He's scheduled to be in, but you still got to follow through and get in. And does a Kevin Wynn make it in? Right now, he's been to USC, South Carolina, that USC. He has been to Georgia. Colorado's trying to get him out for a visit in Texas. Those are your 4 schools. Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, Colorado for the Florida State commitment, Kevin Wynn. That's who's coming after him. And those are the schools involved right now. So we'll have to see. Owusu-Boateng is actually going to visit for the Kentucky game officially now. Texas backed that one up. So is Madden Faramo going to come in? We know Riley Pettijohn is scheduled to be in. Will Madden Faramo be in that weekend? I think we're waiting to find that out because Johnny Nansen was out to see Faramo on Friday. But it's going to be a huge visitors list. 2026 list just as big in that game, in my opinion.
Yeah, one other name to keep an eye on for this weekend, and Jerry, you put the note up about Zalis Hicks and possibly reclassifying as well.
Wow.
Well, if that's the case, Texas might be looking really early to add another safety for their 2026 class if Hicks moves on to 2025. That name for me is Jamarian Vincent out of Waco Connolly. He was on campus already twice this year for the Mississippi State game and the UTSA game. He's expected on campus again for the Georgia game. That would be 3 visits to Austin. You can see the writing on the wall there. Perhaps he was very high on the Longhorns after visiting for the Pool Bash at the end of July as well. And out of Connolly, well, you've already seen guys like, Trey Wisner. How about Jelon McDonald, Kobe Black, all of these guys with Connolly ties now at the Texas program. It's easy to say, ooh, I watched them growing up. I know them, having played with them for a year or two. I want to go join them in Texas. They're certainly having a small little pipeline out of Waco Connolly right now, and Vincent certainly a candidate to join that as well. But Jerry
and CJ, a couple more things, not to cut you off on that Georgia visit I didn't mention. Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma also scheduled to be in with Javion Hilson from Cocoa. Again, what's going to happen with this hurricane? Port Charlotte is in the crosshairs if you're Myron Charles. Space Coast could get it bad this week. And there's a chance that another hurricane comes in, 10 days from now. That might be more South Florida. You have to see if it kind of builds and what happens with that. But Travel could be impacted here for these kids in Florida. That's something to follow. We hope the best for Myron Charles down at Port Charlotte and his family and everybody's welfare down there. But this thing is it's got a chance to do some damage in that part if it heads south a little bit from Tampa. So we'll see on that. But also the 2026 was Diabell scheduled to be in Alabama. Just offered him, by the way.
Yeah.
Diabell, the Texas commit, 5-star junior quarterback, scheduled to be in. Chris Stewart, Zealous Hicks. Tyler Atkinson, the 5-star linebacker from Grayson, great football player at linebacker. He's scheduled to be in for the Texas-Georgia game. Amari Latimer, the running back from Sandy Creek, that 4-star, one of the best linebacker running backs in the country. Tashard Choice went by and saw him Friday. He's scheduled to be in for the Texas-Georgia game, as is Javion Osborne, Kosi Okpala, a 4-star linebacker from Mayde Creek, Tate King, Jalen Lott from Panther Creek, Kevin Ford from Duncanville. This list will continue to expand. Oh, by the way, Jonah Williams makes his official visit that weekend. Nick Townsend said he's coming in. It's a full weekend for the Texas Longhorns for the Georgia game. And all I can tell you, CJ, is doing this as long as I have, and I know you're getting up there in years now, too, doing this.
Hey.
If Texas beats Oklahoma, this may be the best visitor list the Horns have ever had for a home game.
Which is pretty significant, including, some of those weekends back in the day with Jonte Cook, Reuben Owens, Anthony Hill, Arch Manning. For that to be the case now and possibly be on the table for setting that new bar higher, again, speaks to what this staff is doing nationally on the recruiting trail as well. A couple of offensive linemen, 26 that we expect on campus as well. Adam Guthrie out of Ohio. Toa Kato out of Euless Trinity, Nick Robertson out of the Houston area, and then Zayden Crimpen and Bryce Gilmore, both at Prosper High School in the DFW area. So
and I bet Turntine's there as well.
Yeah, I agree. So, again, that list goes on and on and on. Jerry, real quick before we take a brief look at, kind of the expectation for this Texas-Oklahoma game. I know it's Oklahoma that's hosting this year's recruits. A quick word about Mark Saunders and Allstate, our sponsor for this week's recruiting breakdown.
Yeah, guys, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, I think it'd be great to have one place that protects it all. And I've got it for you. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you'll need to help keep tabs on protection for all your stuff. Everything from your home, the car, which I'm in, boat, motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Give Mark Saunders' office a call today, 512-218-8571. With over 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. That is Round Rock, Austin, anywhere in Texas. Call Mark Saunders, Texas alum, 512-218-8571, and do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done in the last year. That's give Mark Saunders a call and put everything. He'll protect all of it.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerry. And thank you again, Mark Saunders, for being the sole sponsor of this week's recruiting breakdown. All right, Texas goes to Dallas.
Yep.
Again, Oklahoma's the host here, Jerry, but moving forward, this game's at 2:30. Yeah. How much of a difference does that provide in this game when it comes to recruiting for the host team? And, of course, with Texas and Oklahoma battling it out for some of these DFW prospects, looking further down the road, will this game become even more of a recruiting fixture when it comes to getting guys on, on the state fair grounds for this game?
I think 2:30 is a big deal for recruiting purposes. I really do, because, 11 a.m. really, unless a kid has a high school game on a Thursday night, if a kid has a game on a Friday night in Houston or in a New Orleans or in these out-of-state areas or far away, a 4-hour drive away, that's a tough ask. But sometimes you have a Saturday morning that you have to do with a trainer or whatnot at a school. 2:30 opens up many more visit possibilities. You can even catch an early flight in on Saturday morning and get to the game from Love Field and get to the game. I mean, so it opens up a lot more possibilities. I do think it'll be very beneficial. And we'll see about Oklahoma this year, but Texas next year, I definitely think it'll be beneficial for the visitors list moving forward. Again, obviously all the DFW guys want to go to the game. Ricky Stewart told me yesterday he's going to come up to the game, and he's not coming as a guest of Oklahoma. I think there's some friends that are that have tickets that he's going to go with, or I think he is. Let's say that, but we'll see about that. But look, I think it's big for recruiting in this game, obviously, and I expect a lot of the DFW area kids to be on that Oklahoma sidelines. And you got to remember, this game can be extremely impactful. The last recruit I believe it was extremely impactful with that was at the game was Colton Vossick.
Yes. Of course.
Now that was a different deal because he's a Texas legacy committed to Oklahoma, and that game made him just say, I can't do this. I can't see myself not playing for Texas.
Yeah, I completely agree. Having, covered Colton very closely down here at Westlake, I mean, there was a noticeable shift after that game in that recruitment. Of course, PK made it out to a few of his games. So did Sark at Westlake, but noticeably came after this game as well. But this also kind of marks that final kind of go around, that final straightaway in the world of recruiting for the current class. And, we saw Texas start moving the chains with Xavier Filsaime. There's a number of guys that we expect to start, really inching closer to for the Georgia game as well, Jerry. But, 20 commits in the class, right on the fringe of a top 5, top 6 class at the moment. Again, it has the makings of a top 2 to top 3 class if all the dominoes fall and Texas continues to win on the football field.
Yeah, let's break this down real quick, and this is a great place to end. If Texas closes out for Michael Terry, Javian Hilson, and a Dalen McCutcheon flip, they're sitting there with the number 3 class.
Yes.
So they're assured of a number 3 or 4 ranked class at that period in time because guys will commit, decommit, flip, all that. Then if it goes to 26 or 27, that would put you at 23 if that scenario plays out. Then you still have 3 or 4 other spots, which probably means 4 because you're not going to turn down a really, really good player. So do you flip one of those corners? Does a Lamont Rogers or a Fasusi at the end of the day say, you know what, A&M's making a move with Lamont Rogers? Does something happen with one of those guys? Does Texas add that third linebacker in their class? I think they would like to, but I don't think they feel like they have to. And then you have, what else is left at D tackle? Any D lineman I think that Texas gets to close out this class, and they need at least 2 more, is going to be a 4-star level prospect. So if Texas were to close out on Terry, Hilson, and flip Dalen McCutcheon, I don't see any way Texas doesn't have a number 3 or 4 class at this point.
And
with
then
a
again,
possibility of 2.
It's all about stacking those classes. And right now, when you're stacking a top 5 class with potentially ceiling at 2 or 3, pretty good, Jerry, especially with the way that this roster looks at the moment. But that'll do it. Again, thank you to Mark Saunders and Allstate for sponsoring this week's show. And thank you, Jerry, for being on the road, providing all these tidbits and knowledge about the 25 and 26 classes for the Texas Longhorns. But that'll do it. Come follow us on ontexasfootball.com, where you'll get all the nuggets up close as well as here on the YouTube channel. So like and subscribe. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm CJ Vogel, and we'll see y'all next week.